When my wife walked out on me, it felt like my entire world had collapsed. We had been married for 4 years, and even though life was difficult, I truly believed love would hold us together. I was working tirelessly, often balancing 2 jobs, just to cover our basic needs. Then one day, she looked at me with cold, distant eyes and said she couldn't live in poverty anymore. Without a second thought, she packed her things and left. I begged her to stay, but she only told me she deserved better, leaving me shattered and humiliated. For months, I lived in silence, haunted by her words. I kept asking myself what I had done wrong, apart from not being wealthy. Nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, imagining her smiling in another man's arms. But instead of drowning in despair, I decided to push forward. I forced myself to rebuild, not for her, but for me. Slowly, things began to change. I met a business partner who believed in me, and together we built something strong. Money started coming in, but more importantly, I gained respect and stability. 2 years later, I received something that nearly made me laugh out loud, a wedding invitation. It was from her. She was marrying a wealthy man and had the audacity to send me an invite. Maybe she wanted to prove what I had missed, or perhaps she hoped to make me feel small again. At first, I considered throwing it away. But then I realized this was my moment. I was no longer the man she abandoned. On the day of her wedding, I arrived in a tailored suit, stepping out of a car that caught everyone's attention. Whispers filled the hall as I entered. Friends who once knew me as the poor, struggling husband now stared in shock. I carried myself with quiet confidence, shaking hands with people who were now part of my circle. When my ex-wife saw me, her smile faded, her eyes widened, and panic flickered across her face. Later, she approached me, her voice trembling. "You came," she said, surprised. I gave her a polite smile. "Of course. I wouldn't miss such an important day." Her groom noticed the tension, but she quickly tried to cover it up. I stayed calm. No anger, no bitterness. I simply showed her the man she once thought I'd never become. During dinner, guests asked me about my life. I shared stories about my company, my travels, and the work I had been doing. I wasn't bragging, I was simply telling the truth. People were impressed, and I saw envy in her eyes as she listened. Her groom grew visibly uncomfortable, as though realizing she still carried regrets. At one point, she pulled me aside and whispered, "Why didn't you tell me you would succeed?" I chuckled softly. "Because love should never depend on wealth," I replied. "But you taught me that lesson the hard way." She had no response. Her eyes glistened, but I no longer felt pity. The rest of the evening, I enjoyed myself. I laughed, I danced, and when I finally left, I did so with dignity. I hadn't gone there to cause a scene. I had come to show her that leaving me was her greatest mistake. She had chosen money over loyalty, and in the end, she lost both. As I drove away, I didn't look back. My revenge wasn't about ruining her wedding, it was about proving that the man she once dismissed had risen far beyond her reach. She would go on with her new life, but she would always remember what she had thrown away. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. I realized revenge doesn't need to be loud or cruel. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well, and showing those who doubted you that they were wrong. She left me because I was poor. She invited me to her wedding, hoping to humiliate me. Instead, she witnessed the life she could have had. And that was all the revenge I ever needed.